and the intelligence community for their successful operation and bringing about the death of Osama bin Laden. You've been watching a Senate hearing on Afghanistan. There's a House hearing on Pakistan this afternoon at 2. That'll be on C-SPAN 3. Now live to the House floor on C-SPAN.
House will come to order. The prayer will be offered by the guest chaplain, Reverend Dr. Alan Kieran, Office of the United States Senate Chaplain, Washington, D.C.
Let us pray. Most holy God, Creator and Sustainer of the universe, we come to this chamber today with humility and expectation. In humility because we know that you have appointed our elected members and Capitol Hill staff for such a time as this. In expectation because faith in you brings untold blessings to hearts, homes, and nations. You say, O God, that from those to whom you have given much, much is expected. Endow our leaders with good health. Strengthen them in body, mind, and soul for the busy days ahead. Grant them your wisdom, peace, and joy in this season of fruitful labor. And may we all reap a harvest of righteousness as we serve you and our nation's citizens. I pray in your everlasting name. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Payne.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and justice for all.
The Chair will entertain 15 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise? The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Where does our oil come from? Much of it comes from offshore drilling rigs scattered around the globe. From the North Sea to the South China Sea, there are thousands of rigs pumping oil that eventually finds its way to the American market. Exploration for oil and natural gas is growing in Egypt, Brazil, and dozens of other countries. But here in the United States, we are moving backwards. Leases and permits have been slow-walked and delayed. 2011 was almost the first year since 1958 that the federal government did not hold an offshore lease sale. This week, we're going to pass legislation to kickstart leases and increase production of American energy. The only reliable way to decrease gasoline prices is to increase domestic supply. If we don't act to expand access to American natural resources, we will see production fall this year. The American people want to get back to work, but high energy prices are holding back job growth. American jobs are on the line. That's why now is the time to boost American energy. I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island rise?
Permission to address the House for 1 minute.
The gentleman from Rhode Island is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the last several weeks, my Rhode Island constituents and Americans all across this country have been nervously eyeing their neighborhood gas stations. Waiting and watching as the gas prices steadily rise has forced many to fill their tanks for no less than $4 per gallon. This news underscores the concerns voiced by hundreds of men, women, and families throughout Rhode Island and all across this nation in recent weeks. They can no longer afford the price of gasoline, and urgent help is needed. Yet as gas prices climb, profits continue to soar for big oil. We've got to find solutions now to lower the cost of gasoline and to end the $4 billion in tax breaks that are paid to big oil. Mr. Speaker, I am delivering a letter today to the Speaker asking him to bring legislation already drafted to the floor for a vote that would release oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and legislation aimed at preventing big oil from engaging in price gouging schemes which drive up the price of gas at the pumps. These are just two measures, Mr. Speaker, which have been introduced to the House and which would provide immediate relief to consumers from the rising price of gasoline that threatens our economy and the well-being of hardworking middle-class Americans all throughout this country. I certainly hope the Speaker will put these on the calendar, we can vote on them, and provide relief immediately to the American people. Thank you.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise? The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, this upcoming September 11th will mark the 10th anniversary of the most horrific act of terrorism executed under the leadership of the now deceased Osama bin Laden. We will never forget the images of burning buildings, crashing planes, and Americans running for their lives. 3,000 people never came back home that Tuesday, and families will again remember the last time they hugged their loved ones goodbye. What will be different this September 11th is that Osama bin Laden will no longer be able to celebrate the destruction he caused and the lives he destroyed. President Obama, we thank you for a superb operation. Thank you for having the courage to make the decision so many would have backed away from. Because of President Obama's team of experts, this risky mission was backed by sound information, sound facts, and accurate calculation. His goal was clear: get Osama bin Laden, and that is exactly what happened. This is truly a mission accomplished. I commend our Commander-in-Chief, Barack Obama, for his intelligent execution. This is not a celebration of death. This is a celebration of justice, courage, sacrifice, and democracy. And this is a celebration of leadership. Mr. President, your 40-minute operation has helped bring closure to so many Americans for a lifetime. Thank you. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise? The gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This past Sunday, I participated in one of the largest sit-down dinners ever held. It was hosted by the Detroit branch of the NAACP. And there we heard from and we honored the conscience of this House, Representative John Lewis. The event is titled the Fight for Freedom Dinner. And some of those freedoms worth fighting for are economic in nature. The freedom to own a home that won't be unfairly placed in foreclosure. The freedom to work a job and not be laid off because you're outsourced. The freedom to receive health care, especially health care guaranteed by Medicare, and not have to go broke or bankrupt paying for it. These opportunities should be available under our legal system to all Americans equally. Mr. Speaker, I yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back his time. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California rise?
Ask permission to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
The gentlewoman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The American people want to know, where are the jobs? After 17 weeks of controlling the House, Republicans have no plan to create jobs and no plan to spur economic growth. Instead, they proposed a budget that puts our country on a road to ruin. They want to end Medicare, gut Medicaid, strip funding for Pell Grants and elementary and secondary education for our students while hobbling our nation's transportation infrastructure. Yet again this week, Republicans are offering slogans instead of solutions. Drill, baby, drill. Kill the bill. These slogans don't amount to a plan to create jobs or guarantee access to health care in America. Instead of another very cynical attempt to repeal health reform and perpetrate their war on women, and instead of offering oil companies free rein off our coast, we should be working together to help the unemployed and to create jobs. We must not forget the 99ers, and we must help them, people who've moved out of their unemployment benefits. They've actually maxed out. And we must invest in our country to stimulate job creation. Democrats have a plan, while Republicans can only offer rhetoric. I yield the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman yields back her time. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Maryland rise?
Permission to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, all the cards are on the table. The Republicans want to reduce Medicaid to a mere block grant program and drastically alter the federal-state partnership that's been struck for over 45 years. The GOP budget argues that under a block grant program, quote, states will no longer be shackled by federally determined program requirements. Sounds nice, right? But, Mr. Speaker, what they really mean is that states will no longer have to meet standards that ensure quality, delivery of service, and eligibility. The GOP budget argues that block grants will improve health care safety for seniors and low-income families. Again, sounds right, Mr. Speaker, sounds wonderful. But they fail to conveniently mention that the states would be required to spend below projected growth, forcing governments to make up the difference by increasing spending. Again, that's a fat chance in this environment. And so what they really want to do is to cap enrollment, cut eligibility, limit mandatory benefits, and lower provider reimbursements. Our doctors, our seniors, and our low-income families deserve so much better. And with that, I yield.
Gentlewoman yields back. Does the gentleman from Delaware seek recognition?
Seek permission to address the House.
The gentleman from Delaware is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I'd like to recognize two significant athletic achievements that were recently announced in my home state of Delaware. In March, the St. Mark's High School football team was named Team of the Year by the Delaware Sports Writers and Broadcasters Association. This fall, St. Mark's finished with an undefeated 12-0 record and captured their first football title since 1978. Also last month, University of Delaware sophomore Elena Deladon was named Player of the Year in Delaware after earning first-team All-CAA honors in basketball for the second straight year. As a St. Mark's alumnus and former high school and college athlete and coach, I know the hard work and commitment that goes into achieving success at such a high level. I also know that high school and college athletes learn lessons about teamwork, competition, and leadership that will serve them well for the rest of their lives. And so I'd like to once again congratulate Elena Deladon, St. Mark's High School football coach Jim Wilson and his staff, and each member of this year's team. We in Delaware wish you well and hope for your continued success. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Who are we waiting on?
That's New York, right? Yes.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
Mr. Speaker, by direction of the Committee on the Rules, I call up House Resolution 236 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 32, House Resolution 236. Resolved that at any time after the adoption of this resolution, the Speaker may, pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 18, declare the House resolved into the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for consideration of the bill H.R. 1213, to repeal mandatory funding provided to states in the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act to establish American health benefit exchanges. The first reading of the bill shall be dispensed with. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. General debate shall be confined to the bill and shall not exceed 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce. After general debate, the bill shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule. The bill shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill are waived. No amendment to the bill shall be in order except those printed in the report of the Committee on Rules accompanying this resolution. Each such amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question in the House or in the Committee of the Whole. All points of order against such amendments are waived. At the conclusion of consideration of the bill for amendment, the committee shall rise and report the bill to the House with such amendments as may have been adopted. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill and amendments thereto to final passage without intervening motion, except one motion to recommit with or without instructions. Section 2. At any time after the adoption of this resolution, the Speaker may, pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 18, declare the House resolved into the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for consideration of the bill, H.R. 1214, to repeal mandatory funding for school-based health center construction. The first reading of the bill shall be dispensed with. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. General debate shall be confined to the bill and shall not exceed 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce. After general debate, the bill shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule. The bill shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill are waived. No amendment to the bill shall be in order except those received for printing in the portion of the congressional record designated for that purpose in Clause 8 of Rule 18 in a daily issue dated May 2, 2011, and accept pro forma amendments for the purpose of debate. Each amendment so received may be offered only by the member who caused it to be printed or a designee and shall be considered as read if printed. At the conclusion of consideration of the bill for amendment, the committee shall rise and report the bill to the House with such amendments as may have been adopted. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill and amendments thereto to final passage without intervening motion except one motion to recommit with or without instructions.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 1 hour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the purpose of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Polis, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume. During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purposes of debate only. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
House Resolution 236 provides one rule for consideration of H.R. 1213 under a structured process, making all 5 Democratic amendments in order that comply with the rules of the House, and H.R. 1214 under a modified open process that gives all members an opportunity to preprint their amendments in the congressional record and have them considered on the floor.
The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume. Mr. Speaker, we are here today to offer a rule to allow us to debate H.R. 1213 and H.R. 1214. H.R. 1213, which would repeal mandatory funding provided to states in the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act to establish American health benefit exchanges. H.R. 1214, which would repeal mandatory spending for school-based health center constructions. Quite simply, our country is broke, and we cannot continue to spend money like we have in the past. Our spending crisis is clear. Slush funds and unlimited taps on the Treasury must be the first to go, particularly when they are being used to fund government-centered takeover of our nation's health care system that does not improve care, does not lower costs, and simply we cannot afford. The American people sent a clear message last November. Obamacare is not the answer. Stop spending money that our country doesn't have, money we are borrowing and spending on the backs of our children and grandchildren who will be left footing the bill. H.R. 1213, introduced by the distinguished chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee, who has been a leader in this fight, repeals the provision that gives the Secretary of Health and Human Services a blank check to determine how much to facilitate enrollment in the state health care exchanges set up by the underlying bill. The law includes no definition of what that means. For example, 100% premium subsidy for individuals to enroll in the exchange would not be prohibited under the statute. In the years since Obamacare was enacted, it has already become clear the law set up an unworkable and an unaffordable system. There have been countless numbers of waivers given out. Slush funds such as this to allow the federal government to continue to push more money onto the states, force them to accept provisions that simply don't make sense and don't work. Just because the authors of Obamacare could not determine the amount necessary to fund these programs does not mean American taxpayers should allow the Secretary to cash this blank check. Secretary Sebelius, at a March 3rd hearing, testified that there are no monetary limitations on the size of the appropriation and the law requires no further congressional action for the Secretary to spend these funds. CBO estimates reduction of direct spending by an estimated $14.6 billion over the next 10 years would be achieved by successful passage of this bill. And that is just an estimate. With a blank check, the spending could be much higher. Mr. Speaker, I submit giving any executive branch official a blank check is a bad idea, particularly when we already have a $1.6 trillion deficit this year alone and a $14 trillion national debt. We must vote to repeal this provision. In regards to H.R. 1214, introduced by Representative Burgess of Texas, who is one of the physician members of our Republican conference, it repeals the School-Based Health Center Construction Fund. Obamacare provides $200 million in direct appropriations through fiscal year 2013, which this legislation would rescind. This money is only for facilities, with an express prohibition on using the funds for personnel or to provide health services at these newly constructed facilities. The facilities could be built with no guarantee, therefore, that the center would ever see or care for one single patient. Another example of the wasteful, duplicative spending that caused Obamacare to have such a huge price tag. It's another example of spending we simply cannot afford. Obamacare and the stimulus bill have already made $3 billion available to the Department of Health and Human Services for facility improvements at community health centers. Providing an additional $50 million a year is duplicative. We do not need to build for building's sake. Therefore, we must vote to repeal this provision. And at that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from New York reserves his time. The gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Polis, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman from New York for giving me the customary 30 minutes. It's my understanding this is his first rule that he is managing on his name on the floor of the House, and I congratulate him in that regard. In the 111th Congress, I had the opportunity to manage a number of rules, and I had a perfect record. I never lost a rule. This Congress as well, I too have a perfect record. I've never won a rule. I wish the gentleman from New York success in his efforts, and congratulate him on his appointment to the Rules Committee, and look forward to working with him throughout the 112th Congress. Today, while millions of Americans remain unemployed and millions more await the chance to receive affordable health care, the Republicans are spending another week rehashing old debates instead of talking about creating jobs, and in fact, in this case, undermining Americans' access to quality health care. This rule brings forth two bills. First, the majority brings forth under this bill legislation that will prevent Americans from accessing the exchanges, which are competitive marketplaces in which to buy private insurance. Now, there's a lot of subterfuge and misinformation in this debate. For instance, there is no Obamacare option. There is no public insurance option that we are even discussing here. What is being discussed is a marketplace in which individuals, primarily those who work in small businesses, are self-employed, will have access to choose from the private policy of their choice. According to the Congressional Budget Office, under this Republican proposal, 2 million fewer Americans will be enrolled in exchanges in 2015. The Congressional Budget Office also says that H.R. 1213 will result in higher premiums in the exchange. Again, a bill that is delivering higher premiums for American citizens. Hardly the outcry that I have heard on the stump. I had the chance to have public meetings in the last 2 weeks back in our district, as many members of Congress have. My constituents, Mr. Speaker, did not request that we deliver higher health insurance premiums. They wanted us to deal with the deficit. They wanted us to deal with jobs in the economy. Not a single constituent of mine asked for higher health insurance premiums, which seems to be a priority of this Congress. Now, there may be a talking point involved, and certainly a repeal of this Bill 12. Both of these bills today were also included in H.R. 3, which was a repeal of health care reform largely. Now we're looking at individual pieces. But this new marketplace has historically been an idea that has had strong bipartisan support. to have competitive health care exchanges that keep intact America's employment-based system while expanding access to tens of millions of people, including small businesses and people who are self-employed. Truly, the exchanges represent an opportunity for a more competitive and a more transparent marketplace that empowers consumers to make the choice between private insurers. Now, the other bill that's brought forth under this particular rule, after we have dispensed with denying health care to an estimated 2 million more Americans through the exchanges, we are also, in this next bill, eliminating funding for school-based health clinic construction, renovation, and equipment. That would particularly harm our nation's health care services, especially for children, youth, and families, and those with low incomes. School-based health care clinics serve students whose access to health care is limited, and frequently the scope of services is determined by school officials in partnership with parents and community-based health care initiatives. Services are designed to identify problems early, provide continuity of care, and improve academic participation. These programs save money by providing access to preventative care that frequently eludes many of the families affected. And yet, also, while we are denying basic preventative care to our nation's youth, the passage of this bill will also deny job opportunities to Americans all over the country who are ready with shovel-ready projects to begin improving and building school-based health care clinics. So here we are dealing with a bill, less jobs, less health care, less education, hardly the priorities that I think the voters wanted for the 112th Congress. Democrats believe strongly that we need to make tough choices to cut the deficit and end the climbing spiral of debt. But what we're left with these two bills, as separate from H.R. 3, is actually the worst of both worlds. The Republicans leave in place the taxes that were used to pay for health care reform. They leave in place in these two bills the medical device tax. They leave in place the tax on unearned income, and yet they remove the benefits to the American people from these taxes. Whenever the American people agree to any degree of taxes, they want to see a tangible result. And what's being done with these bills is leaving in place the taxes of health care reform and removing the benefits to the American people of health care reform. That's hardly a balanced and fair approach, and it's one that the House should reject. I would remind my colleagues of House Resolution 9, which I supported on the floor of the House of Representatives. It dealt with 13 items out of the original jurisdiction of our Rules Committee before the gentleman from New York joined our Rules Committee. We instructed the House on replacing health care reform and what some areas for working on would be. I'd like to submit to the record in the context of this debate, Mr. Speaker, House Resolution 9.
Without objection.
Which was adopted by the House and indeed discusses changing existing health care law within the various committees of jurisdiction to foster economic growth and private sector job creation, to lower health care premiums, preserve a patient's ability to keep their health care plan, provide people with pre-existing conditions affordable access to health care, and many, many other good ideas. But rather than discussing any of these 13 points that were contained in House Resolution 9, the business of the committees of jurisdiction has apparently been not only to repeal health care reform generally, but now to repeal each of the individual components while leaving the taxes in place. We would encourage these committees to comply with House Resolution 9. And I think by rejecting this rule before us today, we're sending a powerful message to the committees of jurisdiction that rather than talking about repeal, 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 they need to also discuss replace. What are we going to do if the exchanges don't exist or are handicapped to provide people with pre-existing conditions access to affordable health care? Again, if we repeal the support for the exchanges, how are we fostering economic growth and private sector growth? How are we encouraging small businesses and self-employed people to have access to the same health care services at a similar cost that large employers already have? I call upon my colleagues to reject this rule and both underlying bills and begin the discussions of how to improve and build upon health care reform, finding the common ground between members of both parties and saving taxpayers money to help reduce the deficit. And I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Colorado reserves his time. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I now yield to the Chairman of the Rules Committee, Mr. Dreyer of California, as much time as he may consume.
The gentleman from California, Mr. Dreyer, is recognized for as much time as he wishes to consume. Without objection.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And let me begin by extending congratulations to my good friend from Corning for his stellar management of his first rule on the House floor, and to say that we have managing this two of my favorite members, including my friend from Boulder, who serves on the Rules Committee with such distinction. And I have to say that I'm also glad to see that we have Dr. Rowe here, who has, over the past couple of years, regaled us in the Rules Committee of the failures of massive, even state government involvement in health care and the dramatic increase in costs that he's seen in his state of Tennessee because of the so-called TennCare program that has existed there, and I know that we're going to look forward to hearing from him later. Let me, at the outset, respond as the author of HRES 9 to the comments that my friend from Boulder has just offered, Mr. Speaker. First, I want to say that I believe that the measures before us are all about job creation and economic growth, improving health care, and improving education. All three of the things that my friend from Boulder indicated that he doesn't believe that we are successfully addressing here. Second, I have to say that as we looked at the litany of those 13 items included within HRES 9, mark my words, the committees of jurisdiction are already working on and focusing on those priority items. I believe that the purchase of health insurance across state lines needs to be a very high priority as we want to ensure that the American people have access to quality health care. We need to make sure that we have pooling to deal with pre-existing conditions. That continues to be a bipartisan priority. And in fact, on the issue of the purchase of insurance across state lines, and obviously on pooling for pre-existing conditions, President Obama, even though he opposed it in the measure, has indicated his support of those items. We need to expand medical savings accounts so that people can be incentivized to put dollars aside for the purchase of direct health care needs and/or health insurance. We also need to do what we can to expand something that actually passed the Republican House of Representatives but was killed by our colleagues in the other body 5 years ago. That is associated health plans that allow for small business, men and women, to come together and actually get reduced rates as larger corporations and entities have done. And the fifth item that, of course, we heard the President of the United States say in his State of the Union message he supported, but of course was not included in the measure, and that is real, meaningful lawsuit abuse reform, because we continue to see the dramatic increase in health care costs because of the number of frivolous lawsuits out there, and we have a load of empirical evidence on that, Mr. Speaker. And again, the President of the United States stood here and talked about how important it was to deal with it, and yet we hadn't. Those are 5 among the 13 items that are addressed in HRES 9, and I will tell you that the committees of jurisdiction are today working on that. Why is it that we're here today? Well, we all know that we did pass the repeal measure out of the House of Representatives. We felt very strongly that the need to focus on some of the most flagrant examples of abuse by passing legislation out of this House needs to continue to be a priority, and that's exactly what we're doing today. Now, I don't like the use of the word slush fund to be thrown around. You know, it makes me a little uncomfortable, I have to admit. But that is a term that has been used by more than a few people to describe the funds that are granted such funds as may be necessary and open-ended without congressional oversight to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And it seems to me that one of the things we need to recognize in a bipartisan way, that enhancing congressional oversight of the executive branch is an institutional issue. We have a responsibility to the American people to make sure that we scrutinize every tax dollar that is being expended, and this legislation is designed to deal with one of the major flaws in the health care bill, that being the granting without congressional oversight of such funds as may be necessary. And similarly, if you look at the expansion in every way of expenditures which are not going to do anything to improve the quality of health care in this country, seems to me that this is the right thing for us to do. Now, procedurally, I know that my friend joins me. I'm not going to ask him to join as Mr. Dix has repeatedly in the past in complimenting the work of the Rules Committee and providing for a process that allows for greater deliberation. But these two items before us are, in fact, making in order every single amendment that was submitted to the Rules Committee that is germane, complies with cut-go, does not waive the rules of the House. And so we had amendments that were submitted. One of these measures is going to be considered under a modified open rule, meaning that any member of the House will have an opportunity, assuming that they submit their amendment into the congressional record. If it complies with the rules of the House, they will be able to offer their amendment to this measure. And we had 13 amendments submitted to the Rules Committee. 5 were made in order. The other 7 did not comply with the rules of the House, were either non-germane or did not comply with the cut-go rule that was put into place at the beginning of this Congress. And so what we've done procedurally here under the rule that my friend from Corning, Mr. Reed, is managing is we are, Mr. Speaker, providing for a chance for a free-flowing debate. What Speaker Boehner indicated before the election last year was absolutely essential for us to do. And so these are commitments that were made to the American people throughout the election process. They sent a very strong message by sending 87 new members of the House on the Republican side, 9 members on the Democratic side, 96 newly elected members of the House of Representatives. But their message was to deal with this issue, ensuring that Americans have access to quality health care, but don't expand the federal government's involvement in it, and ensure that since we had bills dropped on us in the middle of the night, one very famous one, the cap-and-trade bill, a 300-page amendment given to us that no one had seen at 3 o'clock in the morning as the measure was being reported out. They said, read the bill. They said, make sure that you have a degree of accountability and transparency in your deliberations. And I will say, Mr. Speaker, that if you look at what's happened in the last 4 months, we have had, I believe, more amendments considered, more debate. Just take the beginning of our continuing resolution when we had 200 amendments debated here on the House floor, 90 hours of debate, more member involvement than we had in the entire 4 years of the last speakership. And so, Mr. Speaker, we today are on the right track in a very, very responsible, transparent, and open way. We are addressing an issue that the American people said they wanted us to address. And so our priority with this legislation is to ensure that every American has access to quality, affordable health care. That's something that we want to make happen. And I believe that the legislation that is before us today will enhance our chance to do that as we seek to reduce the size, scope, reach, and control of this behemoth, our federal government, which has a $14 trillion debt. And with one of these measures, we're going to be saving $14 billion, a very important step in the direction which both Democrats and Republicans alike say they want us to achieve. So I urge support of the rule, and with that, yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from California yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
Yielding. The gentleman from California again identified several areas where there's opportunities for both parties to work together, allowing the sale of insurance across state lines, something I certainly support, pooling for high-risk individuals, reforming the medical liability system. And again, it really goes to a question of if we are, in fact, repealing in part or all various parts of the health care reform, what is replacing it? When we talked about pooling of high-risk individuals, if we can put together a way of doing that, that can effectively serve as a marketplace or as an exchange. What this bill simply does is repeals the support for the exchanges, leaving many of those with pre-existing conditions, particularly those who work for small businesses or are self-employed, entirely in the lurch. As we discuss how to improve health care for the American people, it's critical to actually have the solution to the policy problem that's been identified. The gentleman talked about an inadequate selection process with regard to the use of funds, inadequate congressional oversight. Again, why not bring a bill forward that talks about setting the right process in place to allow for the correct oversight of the use of these funds? It's a question of making it work for the American people rather than throwing the baby out with the bathwater. With that, Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to yield 2 minutes to my colleague, the gentlewoman from Maryland, Ms. Edwards.
The gentlewoman from Maryland, Ms. Edwards, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the gentleman from Colorado for yielding. You know, here we are, we're at month 5, and I thought that we'd be talking about job creation and spurring economic development across this country, and instead, you know, we're yet again talking about how we can repeal elements of a health care bill that passed some time ago. Nonetheless, today I rise in opposition to the rule and to the underlying bills. Let me just say first a few words about the exchanges. In my state of Maryland, our Governor, Martin O'Malley, working with our legislature, has been in the process of actually trying to make this work, implementing the health insurance exchanges in the state to make sure that people don't fall through the cracks. And in fact, our Secretary of Health has come out with a study that shows that by implementing and going through this process of implementing the exchange and moving through reform, we're going to create jobs and provide health care for thousands and thousands of people across the state of Maryland, and to our small businesses who want to do right by their employees by providing health care. And so I don't understand what the problem is here, and I'm a bit confused. On the one hand, the majority doesn't want to pursue a public option for millions who are uninsured, and on the other hand, they don't want to make a marketplace, which is what these exchanges are, available to people to get health care in their states. And so you cannot have it both ways unless you want to continue to leave millions and millions of people uninsured across this country and without health care. In the underlying bill as well, the majority proposes to eliminate funding provided in the Act to construct, renovate, and improve services at school-based health centers. In my district, the elimination of these funds would mean something very specific. The centers at Fairmont Heights High School, one of the poorest communities in our district, would be without a health center. Northwestern High School in Adelphi, Maryland. Oxon Hill High School in Oxon Hill, Maryland. Broadacres Elementary School in Silver Spring, serving very needy communities. Thank you.
The gentlewoman is recognized for additional 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And so these school-based health care centers offer a wide range of services, from wellness checks to mental health services for our young people, care they wouldn't receive otherwise, or that maybe they would in an expensive emergency room visit in a crisis. And the studies show the link between health care and affordable health care for our students and their education success. And so I would urge my colleagues to oppose this legislation. Let's create jobs instead of dismantling a health care system. And with that, I would yield the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from Colorado reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, at this time I am pleased to yield 4.5 minutes to the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Rowe.
The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized for 4.5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, Mr. Speaker, and I rise today in support of the rule, the underlying bills. And I would like to draw particular attention to H.R. 1213, which would repeal a provision in the health care law that gives the Secretary of Health and Human Services an unlimited spending authority with regard to state-based exchanges. And let me start by saying 2 years ago, when I came to Congress, I looked at the American health care system and I said, what's the problem with it? And the problem with the American health care system is it costs too much money. It's too expensive to go to the doctor, go to the hospital, and to receive medical care. If it were affordable, we could all have it. Number two, we had a segment of our population who didn't have access to affordable health care coverage. Let's say a drywall, a sheetrock worker, or a carpenter who's out working. Maybe his wife works or his spouse works in a diner, let's say. And they get along just fine, but they couldn't afford the high premiums. And number three, we have a liability crisis in this country. It's forcing the cost of health care through the roof. Well, what did the Affordable Health Care Plan do? It did do number two. It expanded coverage for some people in this 2,500-page bill. Remember, it's this thick. But it did nothing to help curb the costs and did nothing for liability, which is forcing the costs of health insurance coverage higher for all of us. I've seen it in my own state of Tennessee. This enactment of this legislation we're talking about today will take off $14 billion that we don't have. And let me just say this. What worries me about Washington, D.C. is we don't get the memo. We're broke here. And number two, that $14 billion is going to do what? It's not going to put one more patient in my office that I can see and treat. It's going to the bureaucracy, and I see it in education, I see it in commerce, I see the beast, the federal government beast, just getting larger and larger and larger. The money actually doesn't get down to a patient that I can write a prescription to, and they can go to the pharmacy and get filled and get their health care. So when we talk about several simple things that the chairman spoke about just a moment very eloquently, let me show you an example. I have a health savings account. This little card right here is a debit card. I don't have to fool with the insurance company. I don't have to fool with the federal government. I don't have to fool with anybody. I fool with me and my doctor. And who should be making health care decisions are patients and their physicians, not an exchange and not all of this. That's just going to complicate it. I go in with this, I pay for it, and I usually get a significant discount when I do that. A couple of other things that you could do, and this, remember, 2,500-page bill, Mr. Speaker, 2,500 pages. You could have done two-thirds of it with 2 paragraphs. One is simply leave children, and which I agree with this, it's in the bill, one of the few things I do. Pick your age, 25, 26, 27, can stay on their parents' plan. Number 2, simply sign up people who are already eligible for government programs. That's SCHIP and Medicaid. And you do those 2 things, you can cover nearly 20 million people without this complex, almost incomprehensible bill. And we have a secretary who really has a fungible account that you can spend billions of dollars that are really unaccounted for. And we're knee-deep in red ink. That's a major problem with granting the Secretary this access to the Federal Treasury. The exchanges mandated by this Affordable Health Care Law are a first step for Washington bureaucrats really to get more control of our health care system. And don't get me wrong, I'm absolutely for consumer choice, because I believe consumer-driven health care is the only way to keep costs down. I think if we don't do that, you never will get the costs going in the right direction. Instead, this creates a top-down mandate for the type of insurance that will be made available. And these exchanges, and remember, when you are looking at this Affordable Health Care Act, that the government decides, not you, the patient, and not the doctor, not you as an individual, but the government decides what's an adequate health care plan, not you as a person. So these exchanges basically are just an excuse for unelected Washington bureaucrats really to make our health care decisions for us. And, Mr. Speaker, this is not a free market system. It's basically central planning. Patients should be allowed to choose which benefits they want when buying their insurance plan. And by passing H.R. 1213, the Congress would send a message that we want health care reform that puts the patients first. Another couple of things that are very simple to lower the cost of health care. Number 1, may I have another 30 seconds?
Mr. Speaker, I'd be glad to yield another minute to Mr. Rowe.
The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized for additional 1 minute.
I thank the gentleman. It is difficult to cover people in small businesses. There's no question about that. So association health plans allow you to do that, to group and become large groups. A second thing you can do that really is so simple, I don't know why we haven't done it. I spent a year when I was running for Congress, after I left my medical practice, I had to buy an individual insurance policy. It was very expensive. Many people out there in small businesses or individuals who work on farms or other places do the same thing. To make that insurance more affordable, not only could you have an association health plan, but number 2, as an individual, you could have allowed me to deduct my health premiums just like a big business does, like a huge corporation does, and you would have automatically lowered my costs by 35% and made insurance more affordable. So there are many things we could do. This is not what we should be doing. I would urge a vote for the rule, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Tennessee yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 30 seconds to respond real briefly. In the minority report from the committee, it discusses the oversight of the exchanges. Specifically, the Government Accountability Office is required to review the operations and administration of the exchanges. And in addition, not 1, not 2, but 3 congressional committees, Energy and Commerce and Oversight and Government Reform, and other congressional committees can provide oversight of the implementation of the Affordable Health Care Act according to Section 1311. And again, if there is additional oversight that the gentleman from California seeks, why are we not discussing the bill that provides additional oversight? We all want this money to be spent correctly and well, and with that I'm proud to yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee.
The gentlewoman from Texas is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank the distinguished speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is an open dialogue with the American people through their members of Congress. I thank the gentleman from Colorado, and I thank the manager of the majority. but this is an open dialogue. To my good friend from Tennessee who may not have read the bill, the Affordable Care Act, and missed the fact that health savings accounts are allowed. No one is blocking anyone and are considered sufficient under that bill. So if you desire to have an affordable savings account or a savings account, health savings account, so be it. But really, those savings accounts really adhere to those who are more wealthy and more endowed with finances. What these repeal bills will do, both H.R. 1213 and H.R. 1214, and I was hoping the Rules Committee would have avoided these bills and not allow them to go forward. They did not. I thank them for the amendment that they gave me and the respect they gave me in the time that we were before that committee. But the fact is that the exchanges are to allow those who do not have means to get into an open market. The same thing that our Republican friends have been talking about, to allow people to go across state lines to buy the cheapest state policy or the policy that they can for families that have the sickest of the sick, children that are disabled, others that are in need who heretofore have been blocked. By the way, the Affordable Care Act takes away the bar of anyone who has a pre-existing condition, such as pregnancy, from not being able to get insurance. What is wrong with that? By the way, the Congressional Budget Office, an independent budget office, says that if we repeal these provisions, the exchange, the premiums of the American people, the farmer, the small business, will go up and not down, go up. What more common sense can you have as a reason for voting against these bills and voting against the rule? 1214 has to do with school-based clinics. That is an innovative concept. In fact, as a member of the Homeland Security Committee, we've begun to think of schools as a site for individuals, if they're built in this new structure, the way they're funded to be able to be designed in a way to ensure that they are secure, as a site for evacuation, a place to go when there is a disaster. That means that a school-based clinic that can be part of the community health system would be available in times of emergencies. What sense does it make to eliminate the opportunity to improve a community's safety and security in these times of trouble and questioning about terrorism? Finding a place where the community could go. I don't know whether there are structures in Alabama that could have withstood the horrible tornadoes, but we're trying to build schools now to be more safe and secure. So both of these bills make no common sense. 1,900 school-based clinics serve our children and their extended families. Do we want a community and a nation that is healthier, or do we want to have a nation of sick people? And I would tell you that this
Additional
is
30 seconds.
Gentlewoman's recognized for an additional 30 seconds.
I thank the gentleman from Colorado for his kindness. This is what these two bills will allow us to become. One, to ignore those who don't have the resources for a health savings account, are not packing big wallets of money in their pocket to be able to say, I can independently go out and get insurance based upon the monies that I'm going to put in some kind of account. Fine for those who can do it. But I can assure you, the nation's farmers and small businesses are glad to be able to know that their employees can go into an exchange. They're also glad to know that there are tax incentives just for them in this bill. And finally, I would say the nation's parents, single parents, parents that are making ends meet are glad for school-based clinics because that helps their sick children be well. I yield back, vote against the rule and the underlying bill.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman from Colorado reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield an additional 1 minute to Mr. Rowe, my colleague from Tennessee.
The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized for 1 minute.
I appreciate it, Mr. Speaker, and I have read the bill, all pages of it. And I'm not saying that says a whole lot about my intelligence, but I did read the entire health care bill. And when you speak of HSAs only being for wealthy people, that's absolutely not correct. In my own practice, we have offered both 300 people or so who get insurance through our practice. We allow you to get a traditional insurance policy or an HSA. And over 3 out of 4 people in our practice choose an HSA. And why is that? Because they make the health care decisions, not an insurance company and not a bureaucrat.
Will the gentleman yield? Will the gentleman yield just for an instant?
Yeah, I'll yield.
And I thank the gentleman for his correction. Then my point would be, is it not okay then for your patients to use the health savings account, but also okay for those who still may not have the resources to go into an exchange. Aren't we trying to do the same thing, which is to make sure everyone of all means and levels can in fact have insurance?
Okay, reclaiming my time. I think our goal is...
Gentleman's time is
Mr. Speaker, I'll yield another 2 minutes to Mr. Rowe.
Gentleman's recognized.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I thank the Speaker. Absolutely, what our goal is to provide affordable health insurance coverage for all Americans. There's no question that I would like to see that in my tenure here in this House, in this body. The problem we have is how do you get there? I think the Democratic side is to expand the bureaucracy, more government control. IPAB is a perfect example when the President spoke of that, and our Medicare patients. I think that's a terrible idea. As a matter of fact, it is a terrible idea. We want to do that. I know there's a way to do it, and again, to hold the cost down. Remember that that's the problem, and the gentlelady from Texas made a point that insurance premiums would go up. Insurance premiums are going up in anticipation of this particular health plan, because why? The government decides what you must have. You don't get to make that decision yourself. That's done by a bureaucrat. It's done by Congress or whoever decides what's in a plan. I'll give you an example, Mr. Speaker. I don't need in my family fertility coverage at my age. I have 3 grown children that are raised, educated, have health insurance, good jobs. But I probably will have to have that because that's what a plan that someone else will decide what I need to have fertility coverage. There are things in those bills that I don't need to have personally that I should be able to pick out, and I'm just one example. People across this country ought to be making those decisions, not the federal government and not a bureaucrat. Ultimately, what's going to happen in our health care system is, because resources are finite, is that care is going to be rationed. Is the government going to ration it, or is a patient and a doctor going to make those health care decisions? I trust the patient and the doctor to make those health care decisions. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
I yield myself 15 seconds just to restate what my colleague, gentleman from Maryland, stated. If the Republicans are against the public option, if they are against the private option in the form of the exchanges, the only option left is paying more insurance premium. That's simply not acceptable to the American people. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield 3.5 minutes to the gentleman from California, Mr. Garamendi.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 3.5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I guess I don't understand. I don't understand what our Republican colleagues want to accomplish here. They talk about free market. They talk about the need to provide options and opportunities. I think that's exactly what an exchange does. So I don't quite understand what this is all about. I was the insurance commissioner, the elected insurance commissioner in California in 1991, and we set up an exchange. Unfortunately, Governor Wilson vetoed it. Otherwise, we'd have this exchange years ago. And a year and a half ago, the California legislature, with the signature of a Republican governor, Schwarzenegger, created an exchange based upon the Affordable Health Care Act. And actually, it was a year ago. And they want to put it into effect. The Republican proposal here on the floor would make it impossible for California to do what it wants to do, that is, set up a marketplace in which people have access to insurance. The notion being that by creating an exchange, you spread the risk over many, many different populations, so that, like a huge corporation, you have an opportunity as an individual purchaser or a small business to participate in a large pool and accept the lower rate of insurance. So what's this all about? What are you trying to accomplish here? Is it some ideology that you just simply can't stand the Affordable Health Care Act and you want to rip it apart piece by piece? Apparently so. And you just don't want to stop there. You're going after Medicare, a program that's been in effect for 42 years, that provides a universal insurance policy to anyone over 65. You're going to terminate Medicare. What's that all about? And give it to an insurance company and not have an exchange? So what's an individual going to do when they're 65 and possessing all kinds of pre-existing conditions? Go without insurance? Be at the mercy of the insurance company? And by the way, you want to repeal all of the insurance reforms, all of the protections that individuals have in the Affordable Health Care Act. This doesn't make much sense to me. I don't understand what your goal is here, except maybe to have some political scorecard. You can say, yeah, we repealed the Affordable Health Care Act. Good for us. But what effect to the population of America? No exchanges? They're gone. No opportunity for small businesses to enjoy a large market, a large pool in which they can have a lower price? They're gone. Oh, I see. You can have an association health plan. I spent 8 years of my life chasing after association health plans that were frauds. They were out-and-out frauds, sold across state lines. Is that what you want? Apparently, the Act establishes an exchange allowing individuals and small businesses to be part of a large pool, to have 4 different options on their insurance, and you want to do away with it. I don't get it. You want to do away with clinics in schools so the kids can have access to health care. I don't understand. You cut all the money out from the community clinics so that people have to go to the emergency rooms in a more expensive situation. What's this all about? I don't understand what the goal is that our Republican colleagues have in mind. The exchanges make sense. They create a marketplace for small businesses. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The exchanges create a market, gentlemen and ladies. They create a market. It is a market-driven program in which competition occurs, competition between the insurance companies who have to offer it quality and price. You got a problem with competition? Apparently so. You want to do away with the exchange. Apparently what you really want to do is to hand the entire game over to the insurance companies, removing all of the controls, removing all of the necessity for them to compete, and apparently create some sort of an association plan so that the public can be ripped off. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Members are advised to address their comments to the chair and not to each other. The gentleman from Colorado reserves.